Hey, welcome everybody. This is this is actually a little introductory portion for the Nevada Trappers Association quarterly podcast. Right about 28 and a half minutes into this recording, up until about 30 or so, we had a small technical glitch where Game Warden Williams dropped out for a moment. I have to admit, I'm not quite smart enough to figure out how to cut that part out. So when you do get there, just ignore it. Grab a cup of coffee, something to drink. Just don't be gone that long because it does pick up again in about, like I said, it only lasts about a minute and a half or so. So apologize for the that little portion. I'll have to do some reading and figure out how to cut pieces out in the future because it will definitely make it look a bit more professional. So we'll get into it then. Thank you. All right, welcome everybody to another edition of the Nevada Trappers Association quarterly podcast. Kind of going free with the term quarterly since we missed last quarter, but that's what we call it, so welcome. Today we have Warden Jamie Williams with us. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the legal aspects of trapping within Nevada. We were supposed to have Neil Cheney, the Trappers Association president, but he's out fighting fires. So you get me and you get Warden Williams, which definitely the better half here. So anyways, so real quick. So if you want to introduce yourself, is Jamie good? Warden Williams, which do you prefer?
Jamie's good, but I am Game Warden Jamie Williams. I'm the Game Warden for Northern Washoe. So if you're not familiar with that area, my area covers the town of Gerlach and above to the California border and the Oregon border. And I also cover the Sheldon Refuge as well. So that's kind of how far east I'll go.
So that's real cool because number one, that piece of Nevada, Gerlach North, is my favorite portion of Nevada.
Oh,
number
really?
one is close. Number two, it's just my favorite port. I love it out there. And number two, I picked up a muzzleloader antelope this year in 12 through 14. So I might see you out there.
Yeah, you probably will.
Unfortunately, it's like the week or two before Burning Man, so it's bound to be crazy.
Yeah, it's better than our the all legal weapons antelope season. That's probably my busiest hunting season, and it directly aligns with Burning Man. So yeah, it's gonna be a little busy for you, but it's gonna be way busier for those guys.
Oh, for sure, for sure. So truth be told, I've always wanted to be a game warden. I did 20 years in the Marine Corps, retired in 13. And I would have, except I'm an exceedingly lazy person, and I didn't want to go back to college to do completely different than what I was doing in the Marine Corps. But I assume you've got a 4-year degree in some sort of like a wildlife science or...
Yeah, so we require a 4-year degree. Usually it has to be biology or usually like wildlife related or some kind of zoology. But we will also take like a criminal law degree. I know we have a geologist degree, but it needs to be a 4-year degree, or you got to prove that you have the required knowledge either through experience or you could just prove it. Or a lot of times you can come over from other law enforcement agencies, but you also got to prove that you have that wildlife knowledge as well. So however kind of the department wants to approve that and how you could prove it, that's kind of on them. But usually, generally, all of us have a 4-year degree.
It's interesting. I think most people, I don't know, maybe I'm generalizing, but I think most people think game wardens are out there and their job is, their whole purpose in life is to find violations of the law and enforce them. Mm-hmm. And I think that's true. I mean, that's absolutely an aspect of the job. But I also suspect, and you can tell me if I'm right or wrong, I also suspect there's a strong desire to care for the wildlife and the environment out there. The laws are set in place to protect that stuff. Mm-hmm. But I would assume most officers they enforce it not just because it's a written thing on a piece of paper, but they enforce it because of the impact it has on wildlife.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's one of the biggest incentives. Like, yeah, you should be following the law, but also, yeah, we care about it so much. So that's definitely always in the back of our mind. And we see the ramifications if, things kind of get out of hand, if an area isn't patrolled, or maybe not as heavily patrolled as it should, like you can actually start seeing those effects quite fast. A lot of times we do see it more so on the reservoirs because those are a little bit we do uh water safety laws, so boating laws. And that kind of goes hand in hand with like, fishing. But you could see that, if you don't patrol a reservoir for a summer, people they'll start like skirting the rules and they'll get a little bit comfy. So you can usually see it on the waters a little bit more, but even like certain areas, if you're not checking certain waterways and stuff like that, you could tell people they catch on. So
Hmm.
yeah.
Interesting. Now, isn't so? Isn't Nevada kind of unique in how they do their law enforcement, whether it be state troopers or as I understand it, and I again could be completely wrong here. It's like you work for the Department of Public Safety, and then when you graduate the academy, you kind of pick a track. Is that accurate at all, or am I completely misunderstanding the process?
No, so I guess the process is you go to the academy and you learn how to be a regular cop. Like I was side by side with a bunch of county and like state parks. Well, I guess they're kind of specialized, but pretty much just county. So, you know, normal cop and all that, public safety. So you learn how to be a cop first. You do that. Then we get out and then we go do training and have like another mini academy specifically for the wildlife and game warden laws. But we've always been employed under the state, but we're under the Department of Wildlife, so we are state police officers, but we're not lumped in with like highway patrol per se.
So when you go to the academy, you go with the intention of being a game warden.
Yes. I mean, some people could go and they could pay their own way, but I was hired on as a game warden and they, paid me through. So usually that's what people do, because a lot of people aren't really willing, especially like in the beginning of your career, you're not really willing to probably front a few $1,000s to go through the training and you have to move into the academy for most of the week. So you do get a few days off on the weekend, so you can go home, but you pretty much are moving and, you got to pay your room and board and all that.
Interesting. Okay. Um, what motivated you to become a game warden? What was it that drove you that way?
I always enjoyed the outdoors and wildlife, like huge animal lover. Thought I was going to be a veterinarian when I was 5, but I think everyone kind of realizes, how much school that is and all that, and it's maybe not kind of the job that you think it is. But yeah, always liked wildlife and all that, and I grew up in California, and also grew up going to Mexico as well. That's where I did most of my fishing and like outdoor recreation. So they don't have like game wardens or really rangers or anything down there. They got the federales, but they didn't do anything with wildlife. So when I took a jobs test, I think I was like 17 in high school, and I was considering maybe the military or maybe law enforcement, but I took the jobs test and they're like, you should be a game warden. And I literally had to Google what a game warden is because I just never came across one, just
Mhm.
because I did most of my fishing, because I just grew up fishing. I did most of that down south, so I never got checked by a game warden. So I really just didn't know what it was. And then when I took that test and figured out what a game warden was, I was like, wow, that's exactly what I want to do. It's law enforcement with wildlife. So I'm like, that's perfect. So I just
Oh, yeah.
went on that pathway when I was 17 and, slowly followed it and, finally got the job.
There you go.
hmm
Why Nevada?
Well, because that's where I ended up going to school. I went to UNR. I
Okay.
did start in California. I did community college, and then UNR was pretty close and had a wildlife degree. Um, and it was close, a little, is a pretty good commute, but still closer, and I can commute to my family. So I ended up going here, and then I just fell in love with it, and I actually thought it was quite similar to where I grew up because I grew up in California, but it was more on the rural side, and it was very similar. I'm like, wow, I do want to stay here. And I just fell in love with Nevada's landscape and specifically kind of the Gerlach area, which is very kind of interesting that I fell in love with that area and now I work there. Um,
Yeah.
so it was very lucky on my part.
No, no, it's like I said, Gerlach is now don't get me wrong. There's parts of Eastern Nevada that are
Oh,
gorgeous,
yeah. Yeah.
gorgeous, but the variety and then just the landscape above Gerlach to me is just
Mhm.
incredible. If the world ever goes to hell in a handbasket, that's where I'm headed.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Just north of Gerlach, or north of Gerlach.
Yeah,
In
right.
fact, typically when I go up to Oregon, I'll go up through via,
Oh,
just
nice.
take that 32, I think, that goes up there. 30
Oh
something,
yeah,
34, 32.
34. I think Highway 34, that dirt road. Yeah,
Good one.
right.
Absolutely. All right. Well, so um, the main reason I want to talk to you today is specific to kind of the wildlife laws and some of your experiences in your encounters with trappers specifically. I mean, if you want to expand a little bit, talk a little bit about hunting, for example, maybe prairie calling, feel free to ad lib as necessary. But obviously, the focus here is the trappers. So, real quick up front, is there anything new this year that we should be aware of? Maybe not specific to trapping, but just in general.
Anything new? Nothing's coming to mind. I'm sure there's something, but really, I don't think there's anything new that you would need to look out for. Obviously, like make sure you when we put out our like small game book and all that, make sure that you check that the limits for certain animals are still the same because those do sometimes vary. I haven't heard anything on for this fall if they're changing anything on chuck or anything like that. Um I'm hoping that they open the Sheldon for sage grouse, but again, I haven't heard anything on that yet. They should be deciding that pretty soon. Um yeah, nothing comes to mind. Anything new that you
Okay.
guys need to watch out for.
So, interestingly enough, I sit on the Lyon County CAB for the Wildlife Commission.
Mhm.
You know, there's an initiative in eastern Idaho in reference to thermal devices. Um, they would like, the commission is looking to make thermal devices illegal to possess during certain game periods. If it's an elk season or deer season, um, not sure personally. I tend to agree with that. I mean, it's already illegal to take a big game animal with a thermal device. I don't know why we need the extra layers, but I think that's on the agenda for the meeting in Winnemucca this weekend, Friday, Saturday, and I'll be up there on Saturday to attend for the CAB. So I guess I would start with what are, if you had to pick the top three things you see trappers doing out there that's wrong, illegal, what would those three things be?
I'd say the top one, a lot of trappers do, is about the trap registration, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So you could either, get a little tag for each one and register it, which I know is kind of annoying because you have to go to the department and it's like $5 per each tag last I checked. So that can add up because trappers you
Right.
know, have a lot of traps out on the landscape. So most trappers do like a little copper, like metal tag, and they'll stamp their information that's required on there. Um, that's probably the most I come across where I just have a trap and there's nothing on it. No tag, no little registration thing that we give you from the department, and not even like anything carved into the trap. So that's probably the number one issue that I see. And then obviously they're probably going to have more than one trap in that area. So I'll go walk the line. And usually I can find a couple more traps, and at least one of them does have some kind of tag or some kind of identification on there. So, and that's not the biggest deal, but you are supposed to have it on each trap. So that's probably one of the biggest things that I see for trapping is that
True.
the first thing that comes to mind.
That's an interesting one because for example, I got a post office box, and I put my name and my post office box number on the little brass tag on each trap. But I just never understood because every trapper is supposed to have a trapper number in
Mhm.
Nevada.
Yeah.
I've never understood why they didn't just go with you have to put your trapper number on there because you're paying $5 a trap, which is half of a coyote pelt if you sell it and you're lucky, or you have to put personal identifying information on there,
Yep.
which is open to anybody who happens to not like trapping and find your trap. I
Yep.
always thought that the trapper ID number would have been the solution to win on that one, but
Absolutely. I agree with you. I think it should be something like that. And in my opinion, I hope it changes
hope
because
so.
you're right.
Would it? What would be the ad? So I like the idea. just trapper's number. We all have to have one. What would be the avenue to make that suggestion? Is that just a petition to the Wildlife Commission, or?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I interrupted there.
No, you're
That was
good. No,
one.
that's good. That's good.
What's the second?
Second. Got the trap regs. Let's see. I mean, I would say probably having what's considered some kind of bait around your trap, and not necessarily like someone's just putting a big hunk of meat right there making it obvious. I'd say it's more, you're supposed to maintain the area around your trap so there's no exposed bait within 30 feet of it. So it could be feathers. That's a real common one. Some bird flew by or maybe died around there, and so there's a big tuft of feathers. That's probably one of the most common is I see is feathers around traps within that 30 feet. But
Even
then
if unintentional.
even if it's unintentional, it still like says if you are setting and maintaining in that area. So if you come in and you see some bird just got whacked right next to your trap, you got to clean that up. That is your responsibility. And also it does make it weird for us because if we come by, before you see that, that could be an issue. But we do take that, into account, like we're in the wild, stuff like that happens. But sometimes the amount of times that the traps happen to be in areas with like next to some kind of kill site or something, it happens quite often where it makes you think like, are
Yeah,
we
this is a
cleaning it up
coincidence.
or are we placing it here and then not cleaning it up, so I don't know if we're gonna if that's a on purpose thing or if we're gonna use that as an excuse like, oh, I didn't know it was there or something. But that's probably the second most thing I come across. And then
Okay.
just like a note on that, I think there's been in some of the old sets I've seen and just from talking to other wardens and stuff, it's sometimes it seems that trappers do, and not all of them, will place their traps in areas where there's nests, maybe like raptor nest or something like that. So there's gonna be things falling, feathers, some flesh, stuff like that.
Okay.
That would be one of those like gray areas where it's like you're pushing it, you're gonna get yourself in trouble. Just if you're going back and maintaining that trap under there, and things are gonna come down every day. You know,
Yeah.
at that point,
That goes to the second half of this conversation.
yeah.
That's an interesting one. Okay. What's number 3?
Number 3, I would say, and this isn't really, it is technically trapping, but I wouldn't call it trappers doing this. I would say it's more I get an urban call, someone was trying to trap their stray cat or something, and they accidentally catch a raccoon or just something they're not supposed to catch. It's not their cat. And so I find out they don't have a license. Now we have this animal that they took, but they also don't want to, keep, and you can't release wildlife, that you've taken back into the wild, especially like if it's a raccoon, rabies vector, all this stuff. So it becomes a problem. And then it's you're trying to be educational, but they also were technically trapping without a license and stuff, so those can get quite interesting, and definitely like delicate to handle because it's usually a sensitive situation or people just didn't know. So I wouldn't even call them trappers, but technically they're trapping, or it would be something kind of similar, like some kind of like private property trapping thing, and gets weird if they didn't know they needed a license, or you find out because someone's dog got caught in someone's trap. So stuff like that is probably the third most common.
So that's interesting because number one, if I'm like trying to trap stray cats around my house, I don't know. It just didn't click that I might have to have a license for that.
Yeah.
It did to me. Okay, it's trapping, but it's like it's not trapping. It's not. But it is. So that's interesting. What's fascinating is you picked 3 things that I would never have thought about. Like I would have thought I can name at least 2. I would have thought you would have said trap check times, like they're just having a hard time meeting that 96-hour requirement. And I would have thought you probably would have mentioned distance from a maintained road, which I want to ask you about that as well. So it's I wouldn't have picked up on those three. Okay, so I distance from a road, just so for people are aware. You and I talked about this a little bit before we started recording. It's generally fairly clear, but there are some nuances. Can you kind of go into that a little bit?
Yeah, so you can't from any, and again, I'd have to pull up the law here if you want me to go into specifics, but generally, if you're going to be trapping, you have to be 200 feet away from a road, and it has to be one of the roads that counts per the law. And again, I could pull up the law and get the words. I believe it says something like public highway, public road, and maybe like county roads is the other one. But um, so where it could get weird, you need to make sure that that road like counts per the law. So a lot of times like certain 2-track roads and stuff like that might not, or depending on where it's at, each road's different. I will say each area is different. So an example would be White Pine County. Um, and I don't know how exactly it's written in their law, but I was told by the warden that works over there, White Pine County has adopted into their county regulations that any like government road, so like all the forestry roads and stuff like that, which are kind of like 2 tracks, those can be considered a county road. So then per our law, because it mentions like county road and the public ways and stuff like that, those roads in White Pine County, the ones that you would maybe consider as like, oh, it's just a trail, it's just a 2-track, like it's not a county road. Well, it might be per if the federal roads that the county's adopted in, if those count, then yes, you could be in trouble for trapping closer than 200. I don't know if I'm putting that right.
Well, I think the takeaway here is for me, I'm a relatively simple person. Federal, I think, is fairly straightforward. The state laws are fairly straightforward, but I would have never in my life, number one, thought a 2-track dirt road in the middle of nowhere would count. And I never would have considered that there's a county regulation that I need to be aware of. So the takeaway here is people need to look at their county regs as well. That's again, I'm shockingly ignorant, but I never would have thought to think about that.
The thing that comes into play is, and a lot of times people read the laws and they just read it like, okay, that makes sense. We kind of like, I mean, we have to know them, we have to dive deep into them. And like, if I'm going to be writing a citation or possibly arresting you on something, I need to know the definition of pretty much every word in that law. So when it says county roads, public roads, okay, well, what is that defined as? And sometimes it can get weird depending on how it's defined, and then, yeah, what other counties are doing and stuff. So, and it kind of comes to like closed areas as well. Like you might, have an area closed to shooting at night, like say, like Washoe County, but you go over to Humboldt County and you don't. So depending on how our regulations are reading whatever you're doing, you could be in violation because there was that county thing. Because a lot of times our regulations say like, oh, like the fishing one is that comes to mind, like the one usually we do like urban ponds, we're like, okay, like the fishing hours are whatever that park is open. So that's what our regs say. But if that park then has a regulation of, okay, like in the summer we close at 10, but in the winter they close at 8, like, do you see how like we have ours, but because then theirs is another one and we kind of write ours around theirs, how it could be you have to know both, I guess. So it
Interesting.
does get, and that's why I'd say like the laws can be confusing and there might be just things that you don't know. So I always say like to be safe, all like give us a call, give the office a call, give our dispatch a call, and if we're not around, we'll get back to you, or they could even probably answer it for you. Like go into your local office, just to make sure, because sometimes things are weird.
So, when you were talking there, I have kind of a random question.
Yeah.
It just popped in my head because you're talking about obscurity and some ignorance and so in this day and age, it's relatively. I think it's unusually difficult to find yourself on property that you should not be on, given all the technology that's available. Um, but there are people out there who maybe don't have a cell phone, or they have the old flip phone, or they're working off paper maps. Um, I guess what I'm looking for is your thoughts on how you would approach somebody who's like, oh, I didn't know I was on private land. I mean, is there obviously game wardens have a lot of discretion,
Mhm.
and that conversation is going to change depending on how that person approaches you or how they respond.
Yeah.
How much do you have a lot of forgiveness for people who are like, they're maybe a half mile into a property that they're maybe not supposed to be, but they don't know that they're supposed to be there or not supposed to be there, or is it just a flat out look, man, you're on private property or you're on property you're not supposed to be on. You need to leave, and here's your ticket.
I wouldn't say it's flat out always like we're gonna hammer you. I say we take the totality of the circumstances, and every circumstance is different. So I'm going to be doing interviews, and it might not even feel like an interview. I'm just going to kind of conduct my normal talking to you and just like, oh, like, where'd you guys hunt? Where'd you come in from? And usually that helps kind of give me the picture, kind of their mindset, where they went. And so every situation is different. So, and you're right. It is very weird to come across people who aren't using Onyx or some kind of mapping thing on their phone that says private, not private. And there's still maps and stuff that says, like paper maps that'll say private and federal. So I guess we would just take the totality of the circumstances and see, and that's like part of the reason why we're there. Because then at that point, like if we're just gonna like, oh nope, you're right here, it's cut and dry, and give you a ticket. At that point, you could probably just have robots and just do AI. But it's good to have the person there because we could see the demeanor, what they were doing. There's just so many things that you just see in person. Like even over the phone, I can't tell you how many times that I talk to someone or something on the phone and then I get there in person. It's completely different. I was thinking of going like down one, pathway, like, oh, they're doing this, this, and this, it sounds like, and I get there and it's like, okay, this makes more sense why they did this. Okay, this is what it looked like. This actually wasn't what they were doing. It just looked like that. So just, I mean, that's why we're there. We're there to investigate. And so, um, if that happens, we get a call or something, which I just recently had one. Um, and I was thinking like, I was able to prove, how they came in and stuff like that. They were caught on camera and all that. So also to these people, a lot of these private property people who don't want you on, they have cameras. um,
Mm-hmm.
so I was able to prove with cameras and stuff what they did and all that. And I also saw them crossing over signs and stuff like that. But say in this situation, they didn't cross in this one area because it was like a 200-acre private property parcel. The guy didn't have the whole thing fully fenced with signs. So if you came in, say you were hiking in from the back where he probably didn't have any signage, like that would be thought of like, okay, you came into the property and you just had no idea because there's no um border between the BLM land and this private property. And so like there I'd be like, okay, so like you probably didn't know, but because I saw these guys crossing in front of these obvious signs and all that stuff, it was more
Yeah.
deliberate and per, the law right there, they cross in front of the sign. So it's just you go off of the totality of the circumstances. So.
That's interesting because I have found myself on private property many times coming in from the backside, and then I'm like, whoa, wait a minute, I'm like not supposed to be here. And then I quickly skedaddle.
Yeah.
But it's interesting you use the term totality of circumstances. There was just a recent Supreme Court decision that talked about law enforcement encounters and the totality. They have to take the totality of circumstances into consideration when they're judging those cases. So that's interesting you use that phrase. Um, Another random thing that popped in my head.
Mhm.
What are the regulations for disposal of carcasses once we take the fur? Is there a regulation? Because I had an encounter with a warden at one point. I had actually the one and only cougar I've ever taken in my life. Of course, I went in, I got it tagged. Biologist took a look at it, and then about 3 weeks later, a warden shows up and he's like, "So, where'd you dispose of your bobcat or your cougar?" And I said, "Well, through the landfill." He goes, "Okay." And I said, "Why do you ask? Are you still there?" You look kind of frozen. You still there? I think you froze on me. I'm gonna text your phone and let you know that you're frozen if you don't know you're frozen. Although by now you probably figured out you're frozen. Sorry, folks. This is how things work sometimes. All right, she's definitely dropped. I'm sure she'll dial back in. I wish I could. I guess I probably could. I'll have to try to see if I can edit this portion out. I can't hit pause, but I should be able to edit this part out. There she is.
Hey, sorry, this one's a new one for me. My phone overheated and it closed out all my apps. That was weird. Yeah, so I
No
got in front
problem.
of the AC now, so hopefully we should be good.
Awesome. So I should have edited this piece out if I can figure out the technology. But what I was asking was, I had got a cougar, I got a tag, did all the stuff I was supposed to do, dispose of the carcass to landfill. And about 3 weeks later, a warden shows up. He goes, "So, where'd you dispose of your cougar?" I said, I explained it to him. He goes, "Oh, okay." And I said, "Well, why? Why? What are you asking for?" He goes,
Yeah.
"Well, there was a cougar disposed of, and I forget where he told me it was." And he goes, "We just wanted to make sure it wasn't yours." And I said, "Oh, okay." I said, "But what if it had been? I mean, was there a problem with disposing of a carcass on public land?" So, and what he said was, "Well, technically, it's littering," which I was like, "Really?
Technically,
Can
yeah.
you go into that? Where should carcasses be disposed of? Because I have the sneaky suspicion most people just think you can give them back out there to the carnivores and scavengers and let them eat."
Yeah, so that's generally like what you do, what we've all done as hunters and
Mm-hmm.
trappers. Um, but yeah, technically, like every once in a while, there's a law that will conflict with another law. And technically, I don't think you would ever uh, get in trouble for doing it with game like out, if you're legally out hunting and, you don't dispose it, like, do not put it, like, dump it into, like, a waterway or something like that, because that's even, like, an extra, I think it's a gross misdemeanor. I have to check. If you put any, like, entrails or anything, or obviously any like, trash into a waterway, so like, or a stream, that's a big no-no. Um, but yeah, technically how the littering laws, dumping laws are written, they do have, you know, that would count. But I don't think if you're being responsible and a good like student, I don't think that would be an issue. Like, don't be dumping it in any neighborhoods. Like, be smart where you're gonna put
Right.
it, and actually like leave it on the land. What I say comes to for dumping and littering is you take it off the landscape, which sometimes people do. They just want to take it off, clean it at home or something. But then at that point, like, don't go bring it back onto the landscape. You're introducing, so a lot of times your home isn't in your hunt unit, right? So now you're introducing an animal to like the landscape that like. So you open up a whole can of worms when you do that. So if you're going to, you know, like leave your gun pile out there, yeah, leave it to where you killed the animal. If you bring it home and then go dump it later, like I've had people where I've seen them dump like an elk, like in areas where there's not elk, so like the Fernley Fallon area, and it looks like they had it refrigerated or at least frozen for a while. And like at that point, like that is littering. You're going out and dumping, right? It's just
Interesting.
be responsible, just be a good steward. Like, yeah, I can see how that could be a gray area because yeah, you could for how the littering law.
Yeah. Don't drop it off at the city park.
Yeah, exactly.
So your audio is a little bit funky. I don't know if it's the fact your phone's overheated or you got some distance or not, but
It might be that, or it might be
There
the
we go.
AC. It might have been the AC. I'm just trying to keep it. I don't know why it got
Nope.
overheated and stuff.
No, I've had it happen to me. No, no big deal. You sounded a lot better there, a lot
Okay, I'll
clearer.
bring it closer.
Um, all right. So the last area I really wanted to get into was, as we talked about earlier, laws are laws. They're pretty black and white, right? I mean,
Usually.
you're either legal or you're not. But I do know, game wardens have a lot of discretion. A lot of how an encounter turns out may depend upon how my response to you or my evasive questions or
Mhm.
whatever. But what I'm kind of interested in is, are there things that you see trappers do? And we could throw in hunters too if it makes it easier to answer. That while technically legal, kind of gives you a sixth sense that this individual is they're pushing the envelope a bit, and they might need a little bit more watching.
Yeah, I'd say, and this kind of happens with like anything that we're watching out. So I'd say it could be hunters, trappers, even boaters or like drivers. Is sometimes it's the attitude of say that car, like what the hunter's doing, like their behavior, or what that boater's doing, and not necessarily like their attitude when I contact them. It's more the attitude of what they're doing beforehand, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
Um, so like not necessarily legal per se, but like how are they driving? Like what are they doing? Is it kind of normal? Is it a little erratic to like maybe they're kind of a little bit of a wild card, which I mean, you can be a wild card and still be legal, but sometimes, if you're kind of in that mindset, you might be skirting some laws or just kind of not knowing the laws or thinking I can do whatever I want. I'm in the middle of nowhere. So I kind of would look out for the attitude of cars, boats, and kind of what that hunter's doing, or trapper.
Let me ask you
And
that:
then what?
is ignorance a defense?
No.
Didn't think so. I wanted to ask though.
But I do like, I guess in not so much us because we don't dish out the punishment, right? We just observe the
Hmm.
behavior and give a citation or a warning. But really, I think when the maybe the ignorance, which has been said, I believe either in the law or just case law, like ignorance is not an excuse. Um, Sometimes that will be taken in, like maybe the judge's judgment, or the
Hmm.
court's eyes. That might be, but again, a lot of times that's a consensus that no, we kind of have to know the law, right? So to an extent.
And I cut you off. So if to paraphrase what you're saying is how the individual is behaving in the environment is a good indicator. Potentially, could be an indicator that they're how they may behave when it comes to the laws, and they may
Yeah.
bear a little bit more watching
Yeah,
based
like
upon that.
say, and this is a very like dumbed down, simplified thing, but like say if you're very loosey goosey kind of how you drive and all that stuff, or like how you're going on the landscape and all that, okay, like maybe or possibly you're gonna be kind of loosey goosey on the laws or like, oh, like whatever, if that's kind of how you're acting and right, like you don't know until you get up and see what they're actually doing, but you might have a feeling like, okay, like maybe we need to watch this person or watch them a little bit more to see what they're doing, and maybe it makes sense down the road or something like that, or maybe they drive a little bit, wild or whatever. Like some people do that. That's completely fine, but just there's certain things that like kind of get your like spidey senses going and you just watch a little bit. And obviously you have to put together reasonable suspicion, probable cause and all that, but sometimes things just catch your eye that just don't quite look right.
Fair enough. Um, I may have a couple kind of random thoughts that come to mind. One of which is, and this is what I don't know if it's wildly off topic, but you are you seeing a problem with squatters is not the right term, but individuals who are staying on the landscape long term, and maybe they're not causing a problem, maybe they're not creating trash, but is that a common thing you see, or is that more around the cities?
So you did cut out there in the beginning, but I got that last end. So you're mostly asking about people camping out and if that's an issue or a common thing I see.
more like long-term camping, like they're living out there, because that's something guys we see a lot. But I live in Fernley, and there's a lot of people that are just they just pull their RVs out in the middle of nowhere and set up camp, and they're there forever. I mean, I would think the
Yeah,
area
we
north of Grove
definitely
is scarce.
Yeah, that's definitely a thing that you see a little bit more often. I do think these people do know the laws that you need to, because it's mostly on BLM land. So they're moving every 14 days. And they know the correct amount that they'll move, that the federal officer won't, or can't say anything. I don't know exactly how they enforce that law, but you can't stay in the same spot. I don't know what they call the same spot. You can't stay in the
I
same
think
spot for more than 14 days.
yeah, I think it's a 25-mile radius if I remember something
Okay.
correctly. Yeah, I would
Oh,
just
that's awesome.
we see a lot of around the towns. We saw a lot of people who are I don't want to call them homeless, but they're just living out there, taking up space and creating trash and garbage out there. I didn't know if it was a problem that you see further out or not.
I don't necessarily see it further out. You do see it on the outskirts of towns and cities just because they have the amenities. So, like, these people, they want to be out of the cities, so, like, they're not getting any, like, city ordinance stuff. Sometimes they try to stay on the outskirts of, like, the counties and stuff like that, so they don't get kicked out as often, but they still want those amenities. A lot of them do still might have a job, or at least, want to come into town to, get internet, charge their phone, something like that. So they do tend to stay around population centers. So I don't see it as much like way out in the boonies, but every once in a while you do get, kind of some kind of hermit or something that looks like they've been living out there for a while, but a lot of times you just kind of leave them alone, and I don't really think I see them like year after year. They might be there for like a month or two in the same general area. So I don't know if they're 25 miles outside of that area, but they've moved, and it kind of is what it is. But I wouldn't say it's a huge problem other than around like cities and towns.
Okay, two more questions. One is for the most part, I see game wardens by themselves. And I know, if I remember the statistic correctly, being a game warden is like the seventh most dangerous law enforcement job there is. Actually, it's the most, as I remember, it's the most dangerous law enforcement job because you can pretty much count anybody that you come across is going to have a weapon.
Yeah,
And of course, the impact of doing something illegal with a weapon is can be very dramatic.
yeah.
Um, I'm just surprised they don't pair you up more often.
I mean, we do a lot of like if we do something like really a little bit more dangerous than like the normal everyday stuff, like maybe doing a night saturation patrol in a certain area, we will double up.
Okay.
Um, but it's just like depending on your state and how many game wardens you have. And for a while, we were super short staffed. Now we are actually full staff. But again, Nevada's so big, so remote, full staffed. Even I would love to have like double what we have, But I'll take full staff. But yeah, unfortunately, like, there's just so much land to cover and all that, and you know a lot of the county guys, you look at them going by, say in like Lyon County and Fernley, how many times do they have a double? And it's probably when you do see a double, they probably are field training, so they have to kind of be double. It's
Interesting.
kind of a problem for all law enforcement, and I will say to game wardens being the most dangerous, I wouldn't even say necessarily because you're alone in like super remote areas with everyone that has a weapon. I'd also say, okay, you're alone in super remote areas and like the stupidest thing could kill you. So like I'm walking across like a rocky area to go check traps. If I lose my footing and hit my head the right way, or just even if I don't die right there, like if I can't get out, someone can't find me. I mean, it could be just that easy, Like we forget how easy it is to die sometimes, unfortunately.
No, that's very true. It's the older I get, the more I think about it because you make a stupid mistake and
Yeah.
it's a long hike with a broken
Yep.
leg if you
Yep.
can.
Exactly.
And that's just random funny question. I'm really surprised you don't have a dog. Do you have a dog?
We don't do dogs
Really?
for the department. Like it would be nice to have like a ballistics dog to help us,
Yeah.
find stuff. But we're we're always like saying we're working on like a dog program or something. And like we would again we have to get funding and all that. And it's a whole process. Like in government agencies, you got to, create a policy and all that. So like that's definitely something we want to do. We want to try to get horses as well. Um, so maybe someday we will. So
No, that's just, I mean, there's so much utility. I mean, one, companionship. Two,
Mhm.
the ability to just having a dog, a dog that's somewhat, intimidating
yeah.
can make
Oh,
people
agreed.
think
Just
twice.
yeah, the look of them. I will say, um, I I have been able to get approved. So I had to get it approved through the department to bring my personal dog with me on some
That's
camp out
cool.
hunts in the winter, specifically for trapping, because it's, again, companionship, maybe an extra alert when I'm out camping,
Hmm.
and warmth, during these Nevada
Oh,
winter.
absolutely.
Yeah, so I've brought my dog a couple times on some trap patrols, but I mean, a lot of, he's getting older, and sometimes the hassle isn't, worth it, I will say. So, because there's, it's personal dog, but then you got to think about, doing your job and all that. And there's a lot of things, and to be safe and keep everyone else safe and all that. Like sometimes, like, do I want to leave the dog in the car? So
No, I
there's
get
a
it.
lot of
No,
things to think about. Yeah.
for sure. All right. So before we wrap this up, I
Mhm.
think I've exhausted all my interesting questions. Did you have anything that you wanted to talk about or anything that you wanted to bring up? Last final thoughts.
Um, my only thing, um, is mainly trappers that listen to this.
I hope somebody listens to this. But yeah, trapping focused.
Okay. My only thing would be to you guys is, I mean, you guys know it's, an historic thing, trapping, also like built this country, all that. So super cool, historically, super cool, hobby to keep doing, and just, things just like fishing and hunting. Someone put this to me one time. They're like, yeah, trapping is hunting just like a different way. And I was like, oh, like it is. So, I
True.
wish more people thought of it like that. But so, super cool thing, great, management tool as well, and also something to connect us to our history and our past and wildlife and the landscape. Um, just know that there's just like all like with hunting and fishing, like I don't know if you've seen the stuff in Oregon, like there's always going to be people that don't understand and don't understand, the good things that come of it and all that and the benefits. So just be, I think, cognizant of that there's people out there like watching and wanting to, take anything that could be interpreted bad. So just this is my advice: is be on your best behavior, so that we don't get like a good management tool and something that is awesome, like fishing, hunting, and trapping, taken away from us. I hope that came off great. Like I didn't really think of how to say that today, but
No,
that's just one thing I wish more people knew is, be a good steward, follow the laws, so no one, be on your best behavior is kind of my thing.
no, yeah, and I appreciate that. It's I forget the percentage, but it's infinitesimally small the number of trappers in the United States. I mean,
Yeah.
it's 1% or less, I believe. I mean, it's
Yeah.
the number of people who trap is very, very small,
Yeah.
and very easily just through the public's perception. Talking about the carcass disposal, for example,
Mhm.
disposing a carcass in a place where somebody's walking their kids every day, then they're
Yeah.
going to have a very disfavorable opinion of a trapper, and
Yep.
it's very
It's
easy to get rid of
very,
us.
yeah, it's very raw and emotional. So just know that it's a very raw and emotional thing, hunting, fishing, trapping. So just know that, and just try to conduct yourself in a way that would, you know, I guess look good to those people that are already, thinking that you're horrible.
No, for sure, and that's why I refuse to put any pictures on social media of a kill. I
Mhm.
just don't get me wrong. I mean, if I picked a big animal or whatever, I might take a picture for personal use, but I'm not putting it on social media because that's
It's
going to get spread around. It's going to be in a PETA post or someplace.
exactly, which sometimes is unfortunate, especially like, people take some really respectful pictures and they're respectful of
Mhm.
their animal, but yeah, even just a normal picture of you next to, you know,
For sure,
an animal could really set people off. So,
absolutely. All right. Well, hey, I sincerely appreciate your time. It was. surprisingly difficult to nail down a game warden for a conversation. You guys,
Sorry.
you folks are not very talkative folks.
Yeah, that is our downfall. We are, for us, I think to be good game wardens, we want to be out in the middle of nowhere and just like see certain people that are just hunting, fishing, and trapping. We kind of are hermits ourselves, so I apologize for that, but it's just kind of our
No, no,
our personality.
and it's also the potential. I trust me. I understand this. The potential that the thought in the back of their brain is probably like, what if I say something that could be interpreted the wrong way? And I'm speaking in uniform on behalf of the department, and I've made a stupid statement. Maybe not even a stupid statement, but just a perception, a statement
Yep.
that's interpreted by somebody in a different way. It's like I didn't mean it that way, but
Right.
that's how they think it, and then it snowballs into this whole thing. So I sincerely appreciate the opportunity to talk to you, and I sincerely appreciate what you do for a daily basis. I know the wildlife thanks you, and outdoorsmen, sportsmen in Nevada thank you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right, I'm going to hit the stop button on this thing real quick. Folks, I'll should have this out in the next couple of days, get it published, and then we should have another one before the end of September, as long as nothing goes crazy. Not that the world's crazy, but it should be out. The next one should be coming in the next quarter. So look forward to talking next time, and thank you for tuning in and listening.